Get out of my sight. You don't belong here. Margaret Ellison's voice slices through the Grand Plaza's auction hall, sharp as a guillotine. Her sequined gown glints under the chandeliers, but it's her sneer that draws blood. Laura Bennett, 35, stands frozen, her beige silk dress clinging to her frame like a second skin. Her jaw clenches, teeth grinding so hard her temples throb. Margaret, 48, a Manhattan art collector with a tongue sharper than her diamond earrings, steps closer, her heels clicking like a predator's claws. "What's that rag you're wearing? Thrift store clearance?" She spits, loud enough for every head to turn. Phones whip out, cameras flashing, capturing Laura's humiliation. Laura's fingers tighten around her clutch, knuckles whitening. "I'm here for the cause," she says, voice steady but low, like a taut wire. Margaret cuts her off. "Cause, please. You're a nobody playing dress-up in a room full of somebodies." The crowd murmurs, a venomous hum. Margaret's eyes rake over Laura's simple dress, her plain flats, her unadorned neck. "You think you can waltz into my world? Check her invite," she barks at a trembling staff member. The young man fumbles, approaching Laura with an apologetic glance. "Ma'am, may I see—" "No need," Laura snaps, her voice cutting through his hesitation. She pulls out a gold embossed card, holding it high. The staff member stammers, "Mrs. Bennett, you're cleared." Margaret's laugh is a jagged blade. "Cleared? She probably stole it." The accusation lands like a punch, and Laura's chest tightens, her breath shallow. She feels the weight of 100 eyes, judging, mocking, dissecting. A woman in a fur coat whispers to her companion, "Who let her in?" Another chuckles, "Lost tourist, maybe." The phones keep recording, their lenses like vultures circling a carcass. Laura's pulse hammers in her ears, but she squares her shoulders. "I don't need to prove myself to you," she says, her words a quiet defiance. Margaret steps closer, her perfume choking the air. "Oh, honey, you're proving exactly what you are. A cheap fraud." She snatches a glass of red wine from a passing tray, and with a flick of her wrist, splashes it across Laura's dress. The liquid stains the beige silk like blood, dripping onto the marble floor. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Laura's hands tremble, but she doesn't flinch. Her eyes lock onto Margaret's, burning with a fire that silences the room for a heartbeat. "You'll regret that," Laura says, her voice low, a promise wrapped in steel. Margaret smirks, tossing her hair. "Regret? I'm Margaret Ellison. I own this city's art scene. You're nothing." She turns to the crowd, raising her glass as if toasting her victory. "Someone get this trash out before she ruins the evening." The staff member hesitates, caught between Margaret's command and Laura's unyielding stance. Laura's fingers curl into fists, nails biting into her palms. She feels the sting of the wine soaking through her dress, cold against her skin, but it's the humiliation that burns hotter. Every whisper, every stare, every click of a camera feels like a lash. A man in a tuxedo mutters, "She doesn't look like she belongs." Laura hears it, and her heart lurches, but she refuses to break. She steps forward, closing the gap between her and Margaret. "You don't get to decide who belongs," she says, her voice rising just enough to carry. The crowd hushes, sensing a shift. Margaret's smirk falters for a split second, but she recovers, leaning in. "Keep talking, sweetheart. You're only digging your grave deeper." The words are a challenge, a dare to fight back in a world where Margaret holds all the cards, or so she thinks. Laura's lips part, ready to fire back, but a distant figure moves through the crowd, unnoticed by Margaret. The air crackles with tension, the promise of a reckoning just out of sight. Laura Bennett stands rooted to the marble floor of the Grand Plaza's auction hall, her beige silk dress dripping with Margaret Ellison's red wine. The stain spreads like a wound, but it's the weight of the crowd's stares that cuts deeper. Her fists clench, nails carving crescents into her palms. Margaret's smirk is a blade, slicing through the air as she waves off a staff member's hesitant approach. "Remove her," Margaret snaps, her voice a whip crack. "She's ruining my evening." The crowd's murmurs swell, a chorus of judgment. Phones flash, capturing every second of Laura's humiliation. A woman in pearls hisses, "She's out of place." Another mutters, "Embarrassing." Laura's chest heaves, her breath sharp and ragged, but her eyes burn with defiance. She steps forward, closing the gap to Margaret, her flat silent against the marble. "You don't own this room," she says, her voice low, steady, a steel wire stretched taut. Margaret laughs, a harsh grating sound. "Own it? I am in this room. You're just dirt on my floor." She flicks her wrist, dismissing Laura like a servant. The staff member edges closer, his face pale, torn between duty and discomfort. "Ma'am, please," he mumbles, gesturing toward the exit. Laura's jaw tightens, teeth grinding until her temples pulse. She doesn't budge. "I'm here for the kids who need books, not your approval," she fires back, her words a quiet grenade. The crowd hushes, some leaning forward, caught by her resolve. Margaret's eyes narrow, her diamond earrings glinting as she leans in, voice dripping venom. "Kids, spare me the sob story. You're a fraud, and everyone sees it." She turns to the crowd, arms wide, playing to her audience. "Who let this nobody in? She's a disgrace." Laura's pulse thunders, her heart hammering against her ribs. The word nobody lands like a fist, echoing every doubt she's buried since marrying Daniel Harper. But she doesn't flinch. Her spine straightens, shoulders squaring like a soldier facing fire. "Call me what you want," she says, her voice rising, clear and unshaken. "But I'm not leaving, not because of you." The crowd shifts, whispers rippling like a stone dropped in water. A man in a tuxedo frowns, rethinking his judgment. A woman with a diamond choker hesitates, her phone lowering slightly. Margaret's face twists, her composure cracking. "You think you can talk back to me?" she hisses, stepping so close Laura can smell her floral perfume, sharp and suffocating. "I've built this city's art scene. You're nothing but a cheap dress and a stolen invite." Laura's hands tremble, but she holds Margaret's gaze unflinching. "My worth isn't in my dress," she says, her voice a blade of its own. "It's in what I do for others. Can you say the same?" The question hangs heavy, a challenge that silences the room for a heartbeat. The staff member freezes, unsure how to proceed. Margaret's smirk falters, her eyes darting to the crowd, seeking allies. But some faces now show doubt, others curiosity. Laura takes a step back, not in retreat, but with purpose. She grabs her clutch, stained with wine, and turns toward the exit, her movements deliberate, graceful. "You'll see who I am," she says, her voice low, prophetic, echoing in the hushed hall. The crowd parts as she walks, her head high, the red stain on her dress like a badge of defiance. Margaret scoffs, trying to reclaim control. "Good riddance," she calls, but her voice wavers, betraying a flicker of unease. As Laura reaches the grand doors, a man's silhouette looms in the shadows, watching her exit with an intensity that promises consequences. The crowd's whispers grow louder, phones still recording, unaware that the real storm is just beginning. Margaret Ellison stands triumphant in the Grand Plaza's auction hall, her sequined gown catching every light as the crowd's whispers fuel her ego. Laura Bennett's exit, her beige dress stained red with wine, feels like a victory. Margaret tosses her hair, diamond earrings flashing, and raises her glass to a nearby ally. "That's how you handle trash," she says, voice sharp as a shard of glass. But the words barely leave her lips when a woman in a velvet gown leans toward her companion, muttering, "Wasn't that Laura Bennett, Harper's wife?" Margaret's smile freezes, her grip on the glass tightening until her knuckles blanch. Her pulse quickens, a cold prickle crawling up her spine. She laughs, sharp and forced, brushing off the comment. "Harper, please, that nobody's not married to anyone important." But her eyes dart to the crowd, scanning for confirmation. A man in a pinstripe suit scrolls on his phone, his brow furrowing. "Look at this," he says, showing his wife a headline. "Daniel Harper, tech billionaire, spotted with wife Laura at charity gala." Margaret's stomach lurches, her breath catching like a hook in her throat. She snatches the phone, her manicured nails clicking against the screen. The photo shows Laura in that same understated style, beside a man whose quiet intensity screams power. Daniel Harper, billionaire, her victim's husband. Margaret's chest tightens, her heart pounding like a war drum. No, she hisses, shoving the phone back. She's a fraud, she has to be. But doubt creeps in, a venom seeping through her veins. She turns to a staff member, her voice low, urgent. That woman, Laura, who cleared her invite? The young man, still shaken from the confrontation, stammers. Mrs. Bennett, VIP. Her name's on the platinum list. Margaret's eyes widen, her lips parting in a silent gasp. Platinum list, reserved for the elite, people with money, influence, power, people like Daniel Harper. The crowd's murmurs grow louder, a buzz of accusation. A woman in a sapphire necklace whispers, Margaret went too far. Another says, that was Harper's wife? She's done for. Margaret's head snaps toward them, her face flushing crimson. Mind your own business, she snaps, but her voice cracks, betraying her panic. She smooths her gown, fingers trembling, trying to reclaim control, but the phones keep flashing, their lenses catching every flicker of fear in her eyes. The video of her splashing wine on Laura is already spreading, a digital wildfire she can't contain. She spins toward the exit, her heels clicking furiously, determined to find Laura and fix this before it spirals. But a glint on the floor stops her cold. A pearl earring, delicate and out of place, lies near where Laura stood. Margaret bends down, her fingers brushing the cool gem. It's not hers, it's too simple, too modest. Like Laura. Her mind races. Did Laura drop it? Why does it feel significant? She pockets it, her hands shaking, a strange unease settling in her gut. It's just an earring, she tells herself, but the weight of it feels like a warning. Mrs. Ellison, a voice cuts through her thoughts. A staff supervisor, stern-faced, approaches. We need to discuss the incident. The board's already getting calls. Margaret's jaw drops, her voice a hiss. Calls? From who? The supervisor's eyes are cold. Important people. They saw the video. They're not happy. Margaret's knees weaken, her hand clutching a nearby chair for support. The room spins, the crowd's whispers now a roar in her ears. She sees a man in the corner, his silhouette familiar, watching her with an intensity that chills her blood. Is that Harper? Her throat tightens, her breath shallow. She forces a smile, her voice brittle. It was a misunderstanding. I'll handle it. But her words sound hollow, even to her. The crowd's eyes bore into her, no longer admiring but judging. The pearl earring burns in her pocket, a tiny anchor pulling her toward a truth she's not ready to face. She takes a step toward the exit, her heart racing, knowing the real cost of her disgraceful move is just beginning to unfold. You've made a mess, Margaret, and I won't clean it up. Richard Klein's voice snarls through the phone, his words a whip cracking across Margaret Ellison's pride. Her fingers clutch the pearl earring in her pocket, its smooth surface a cold reminder of her mistake. She stands in the Grand Plaza's bustling lobby, her sequined gown now feeling like armor too heavy to bear. Her pulse races, a drumbeat of panic. The video of her splashing wine on Laura Bennett is everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, gossip blogs. Comments flood in. Disgusting snob. Who does she think she is? Her chest tightens, her breath shallow as she scans the crowd for Laura. She needs to fix this. Now. Margaret shoves past a group of tuxedoed men, her heels clicking like gunfire. Where is she? She mutters, her voice a low growl. She corners a staff member, a nervous girl with a clipboard. Laura Bennett. Where'd she go? The girl flinches, stammering. She left, ma'am. Headed toward Brooklyn, I think. Brooklyn. The word hits like a slap. Margaret's lip curls, but her stomach twists. Brooklyn means Laura's not hiding in some penthouse. She's gone back to her roots. That realization stings, a needle in Margaret's pride. She storms out, hailing a cab with a sharp wave. Brooklyn, fast. The driver nods, peeling into traffic. Margaret's phone buzzes, another notification, a news alert. Art collector Margaret Ellison faces backlash for public humiliation at auction. Her fingers tremble, nearly dropping the phone. She scrolls, her eyes burning. The video has 200,000 views. Her name trends with hashtags are under an Ellison shame or an art world snob. Her throat closes, her breath a ragged gasp. She dials her assistant, voice clipped. Find Laura Bennett, now. I need her address. The cab weaves through Manhattan's chaos, but Margaret's mind is louder. She sees Laura's face, those steady eyes, that defiant stance. You'll see who I am, Laura had said. The words echo, a taunt. Margaret's nails dig into her palms, drawing blood. She's not sorry. Not really. But she knows Daniel Harper's power. A billionaire like him could crush her career, her connections, her life. She needs to find Laura. Spin this, make it right before he does worse. Her hand brushes the pearl earring again, its weight heavier than before. Why does it matter? She shakes the thought, focusing on survival. In Brooklyn, the cab pulls up to a community center, its sign faded but proud. Bright Futures Education Hub. Margaret steps out, her gown absurd against the gritty sidewalk. She pushes through the door, her eyes scanning the room. Kids laugh, scribbling in notebooks. Volunteers bustle, but no Laura. Margaret's chest heaves, frustration boiling. She grabs a volunteer, a wiry man with glasses. Laura Bennett, is she here? He frowns, protective. Who's asking? Margaret's temper flares. Margaret Ellison. Tell me where she is. The man's eyes narrow, recognizing her name. You're the one from the video, he says, voice cold. She's not here for you to bully again. Margaret's face burns, her pulse hammering. This is a misunderstanding, she snaps, but her voice wavers. The volunteer points to the door. Leave, now! The rejection stings, a public slap of its own. She steps back, her heels unsteady. Outside, her phone buzzes again, a text from Richard Klein. Fix this, or the board pulls your funding. Her heart lurches, her breath catching. She's losing control, her empire crumbling with every retweet. The crowd outside the center grows, some pointing, whispering. That's her, one says, phone raised. Margaret's hands shake, her composure fracturing. She dials her assistant again, voice a hiss. Get me her exact address. I don't care how. As she waits, her eyes catch a poster on the center's wall. Laura Bennett, Volunteer of the Year. The photo shows Laura smiling, surrounded by kids. Margaret's stomach churns, a mix of rage and dread. She's not just a nobody. She's someone who matters. The realization hits like a fist, but Margaret shoves it down. She'll find Laura, say whatever it takes, and bury the scandal. But the pearl earring in her pocket feels like a ticking bomb, whispering of secrets she can't yet grasp. You're stronger than her, Laura. Don't let her win. Daniel Harper's voice cuts through the hum of the Bright Futures Education Hub in Brooklyn, his hand gripping Laura Bennett's tightly. Her beige dress, still stained with Margaret Ellison's red wine, clings to her frame, a badge of the humiliation she endured hours ago at the Grand Plaza. Laura's jaw clenches, her teeth grinding as she kneels beside a young girl, helping her sound out a word in a tattered book. Her eyes burn, not with tears, but with a fire that refuses to flicker out. The community center buzzes with kids' laughter, volunteers chatter, and the scratch of pencils. But Laura's heart pounds, replaying Margaret's venom. You're a nobody playing dress-up. She rises, brushing her hands on her dress, the wine stain stark against the beige silk. I'm not running, Daniel, she says, her voice low, steady, a blade honed by resolve. Daniel, 42, a tech billionaire with eyes that see through walls, nods, his suit jacket slung over a chair, sleeves rolled up. I know, he says, his tone fierce with pride. You never do. He steps closer, his hand brushing her cheek, gentle but firm. That video's everywhere. She's crumbling already. Laura's lips twitch, a half smile breaking through. Good, she says, her voice sharp. Let her feel it. A boy tugs at Laura's sleeve, holding up a drawing. Miss Laura, look! His grin is wide, gap-toothed, oblivious to her turmoil. She kneels again, her fingers steady as she praises his work. This is amazing, Jamal, she says, her voice warm, masking the storm inside. Her chest tightens, the weight of Margaret's words, fraud, nobody, still clawing at her. But these kids, this place ground her. She's been here for years, teaching, mentoring, giving everything to kids who have nothing. This is her world, not Margaret's glittering cage. Daniel watches, his gaze intense, protective. "You're why I started the AI project," he says, voice low, cutting through the room's noise. "Your heart, your fight, it's changing lives." Laura's breath catches, her fingers pausing on the book. She looks up, meeting his eyes, seeing the truth in them. She's not just his wife, she's his partner, his muse. The thought steadies her, but doubt lingers. "They'll always see me as an outsider," she says, her voice a whisper, raw. "No matter what I do." Daniel's jaw tightens, his hand squeezing hers. "They're wrong, and they'll learn." His phone buzzes, a message from his team. Ellison's scrambling, the board's furious. Laura's eyes narrow, a spark igniting. "She's coming for me, isn't she?" she says, not a question, but a certainty. Daniel nods. "She's desperate. Let her come." Laura's lips press into a line, her resolve hardening like steel in a forge. She won't hide. Not here. Not anywhere. A volunteer, a wiry woman with a clipboard, approaches. "Laura, you okay?" she asks, glancing at the wine stain. Laura nods, her chin lifting. "I'm fine, Sarah. Just another day." But her hands tremble slightly, betraying the effort to stay composed. She moves to a table, helping another child with a math problem, her voice calm but her pulse racing. The center is her sanctuary, but Margaret's attack has breached its walls. She feels exposed, vulnerable, yet unbroken. Daniel's phone buzzes again. A notification. Ellison spotted outside. Laura's head snaps up, her eyes locking with his. "She's here," she says, her voice a low growl. Her fingers curl into fists, nails biting into her palms. She's not ready to forgive, not yet. But she's ready to fight. As she helps a child pack up, her hand brushes a stack of papers, dislodging a faded letter tucked beneath. It falls to the floor, its seal broken, the word Ellison scrawled in old ink. Laura freezes, her breath hitching. Something's coming, something bigger than Margaret's cruelty. "I'm sorry, all right? Let's end this circus." Margaret Ellison's voice cracks like a snapped wire as she bursts into the Bright Futures Education Hub, her sequined gown glaringly out of place among the worn tables and children's drawings. Laura Bennett freezes, her hand clutching the faded letter she just found. The word Ellison scrawled on it like a warning. Her pulse hammers, her jaw tightening until her teeth ache. Margaret's diamond earrings flash as she strides forward, heels stabbing the linoleum floor. "You've made your point," Margaret hisses, her face flushed, eyes darting to avoid the curious stares of volunteers. "That video's ruining me. Name your price." Laura's fingers tighten around the letter, her knuckles whitening. She rises from the table where she was helping a child, her wine-stained beige dress a silent accusation. "Price?" she says, her voice low, sharp as a blade. "You think you can buy your way out of this?" Margaret's lips twist, her composure fraying. "Don't play noble," she snaps, cutting Laura off before she can continue. "Everyone has a price. Tell me yours, and this ends now." The words are a slap, but Laura's eyes burn, unyielding. She steps forward, closing the gap, her breath steady despite the storm in her chest. Daniel Harper, standing nearby, folds his arms, his gaze cold as steel. "You don't get to dictate terms," he says, his voice a low growl. Margaret flinches, her eyes flicking to him, recognizing the billionaire's quiet menace. "Mr. Harper," she stammers, her hands trembling, "this was a misunderstanding. I didn't know she was your wife." Laura's lip curls, her voice slicing through. "That's your excuse? You humiliated me because I didn't look like I belonged?" The room quiets, volunteers pausing, kids glancing up. Margaret's face reddens, her fingers clutching her purse. "I was wrong," she says, voice brittle, forced. "I'm sorry." Laura's chest tightens, the apology ringing hollow. "Sorry doesn't erase what you did," she says, her words deliberate, each one a hammer strike. "You mocked me, shamed me, because you thought I was nothing. You don't get to walk away clean. Margaret's eyes narrow, her pride clawing back. What do you want then? To ruin me? Laura's gaze doesn't waver. I want you to learn, she says, her voice rising firm. Volunteer here. 6 months. Teach these kids. See what it means to care about something bigger than your ego. The demand lands like a grenade, and Margaret's jaw drops, her breath catching. Volunteer? Margaret chokes out, her voice a mix of disbelief and scorn. Here? With these people? The insult stings and a volunteer nearby gasps, her hand tightening on a stack of books. Laura's fists clench, nails biting into her palms. Yes, here, she says, her voice a quiet inferno. Or I let Daniel's lawyers tear your world apart. Daniel steps closer, his presence a wall of authority. Choose fast, Mrs. Ellison, he says, his tone icy. My team's already drafting the papers. Margaret's eyes dart between them, her face paling as the weight of her mistake crashes down. She nods, a jerky, reluctant motion. Fine. 6 months, she mutters, her voice barely audible, her pride shattered. Laura's shoulders relax slightly, but her eyes remain sharp, watchful. She glances at the letter in her hand, its edges worn, the Ellison name glaring. What's this? She asks, holding it up. Margaret's eyes widen, a flicker of panic crossing her face. Nothing, she says too quickly, her hand twitching as if to snatch it. Laura pulls it back, her instincts flaring. It's got your name on it, she says, her voice low, probing. Margaret's lips part, but no words come. Her face is a mask of fear. Daniel's eyes narrow, sensing the shift. What are you hiding? He asks, his voice a blade. Margaret shakes her head, her hands trembling. It's just old business, she stammers, but her eyes betray her, darting to the door. Laura tucks the letter into her clutch, her pulse quickening. We'll find out, she says, her words a promise, heavy with intent. The room feels charged, the air thick with unspoken secrets. Margaret backs away, her heels unsteady, her empire teetering on the edge of a cliff she can't see. Keep your mouth shut or you'll regret it. Richard Klein's voice snarls through the phone, a venomous hiss that makes Laura Bennett's blood run cold. She stands in the cluttered office of the Bright Futures Education Hub in Brooklyn, her fingers gripping the faded letter with Ellison scrawled across it. Her pulse pounds, her jaw clenching until her teeth ache. The letter found moments ago after Margaret's forced apology feels like a live wire in her hand. Richard, 50, the steely-eyed manager of Margaret Ellison's prestigious Manhattan Museum, isn't just angry. He's dangerous. His threat slices through the line, a blade aimed at Laura's resolve. You don't scare me, Laura snaps, her voice sharp, unwavering, despite the tremor in her hands. Richard's laugh is cold, jagged. You're playing with fire, Mrs. Bennett. Drop that letter. Forget what you saw. He cuts her off before she can respond, his words a barrage. You think you're safe because of Harper? Money doesn't protect you from me. Laura's chest tightens, her breath shallow. She glances at Daniel Harper, who stands nearby, his fists clenched, eyes blazing with fury. Who's this? Daniel demands, snatching the phone. Richard's voice doesn't falter. Tell your wife to back off, Harper, or I'll bury you both. Laura's fingers curl tighter around the letter, nails biting into her palms. The memory of Margaret's wine splashing her dress fuels her defiance. We're not backing down, she says, her voice a low growl, stealing the phone back. Richard's tone turns icy. You're digging your own grave. That letter's nothing. You're nothing. The words echo Margaret's earlier taunts. But Laura's spine stiffens, her resolve hardening like steel. Then why are you so scared? She fires back, her words a dart hitting its mark. Richard pauses, a beat of silence that screams guilt. Daniel's hand lands on her shoulder, his grip firm, protective. We're coming for you, he says into the phone, his voice a quiet storm. Richard scoffs, but it's strained. Try it. You'll crash and burn. The call ends with a click, leaving Laura's pulse hammering in her ears. She looks at the letter, its worn edges taunting her. It mentions a fund tied to Margaret's museum, with Richard's initials scrawled in the margin. Her gut twists, sensing a deeper rot. He's hiding something, she says, her voice low, certain. Daniel nods, his jaw tight. We'll find it. A volunteer bursts in, her face pale. Laura, someone's outside, asking for you. Laura's heart lurches, her fingers tightening on the letter. She steps to the window, peering through the blinds. A man in a dark suit lingers across the street, his eyes locked on the center. Richard's man. Her breath catches, her fists clenching. He's watching us, she says, her voice a hiss. Daniel's eyes narrow, his body tensing like a coiled spring. Let him watch. We're not hiding. Laura turns back to the letter, her mind racing. Richard's threat wasn't just about her. It was about protecting something bigger. The museum, the fund. Her humiliation at the auction feels like a spark in a much larger fire. She tucks the letter into her clutch, her hands steady now, fueled by purpose. We need answers, she says, her voice cutting through the room's tension. The volunteer hesitates, glancing at the door. Be careful, she says, her voice trembling. Laura nods, her chin lifting. She's not the same woman who stood frozen under Margaret's wine. She's a fighter now. Daniel grabs his jacket, his movements sharp, decisive. I'm calling Anna, he says, referring to Laura's journalist friend. We're digging into this. Tonight. Laura's eyes meet his, a silent pact forming. Richard's threat hangs heavy, but it's only stoked their fire. As they step toward the door, the man outside vanishes into the shadows, leaving behind a chill that promises trouble. You're in over your head, Laura. Walk away. Richard Klein's threat echoes in Laura Bennett's mind as she huddles over a cluttered desk in Anna's cramped Brooklyn apartment. The faded letter with Ellison scrawled on it spread out before her. Her pulse pounds, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth throb. The letter, found at the Bright Futures Education Hub, mentions a fund tied to Margaret Ellison's museum and bears Richard's initials. Laura's fingers tremble, not from fear, but from a fire igniting in her gut. She's done being the victim. Margaret's wine-soaked humiliation at the Grand Plaza auction was just the beginning. This letter points to something darker, something worth Richard's menacing call. Anna, 45, a wiry journalist with eyes sharp as razors, slams a laptop onto the desk. This fund's a ghost, she says, her voice clipped, urgent. No public records, no filings. It's buried deep. Laura's lips press into a line, her nails biting into her palms. Then we dig deeper, she says, her voice a low growl, steady despite the storm in her chest. Daniel Harper, her billionaire husband, leans against the wall, his rolled-up sleeves revealing forearms tense like steel cables. Richard's scared, he says, his tone cold, calculated. He's protecting something big. We need proof. Laura's eyes scan the letter again, its cryptic lines burning into her mind. Ellison Fund, art acquisition, RK oversight. Her breath catches, her instincts screaming. Art acquisition, she mutters. The museum's been buying record-breaking pieces. What if they're not real? Anna's head snaps up, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Fakes? She says, her voice sharp. That's $1 billion scam if true. Daniel's eyes narrow, his jaw tightening. Richard's running it, he says. Margaret's just the face. Laura's heart races, her mind piecing together fragments. The pearl earring she lost at the auction, found by Margaret, nags at her. She pulls it from her clutch, its simplicity stark against the chaos. This, she says, holding it up. It's from a painting I saw at the museum. A portrait. Stolen 10 years ago. Anna's eyes widen, her fingers pausing. Stolen? That's a lead. She pulls up an old article. Priceless Renaissance portrait vanished. Pearl earring key clue. Laura's pulse hammers, her breath shallow. It's connected, she says, her voice ablade. The fund's laundering money through fake art. Daniel's phone buzzes. A message from his tech team. Museum server access granted. He grins, a predator's smile. We're in, he says, plugging a USB drive into Anna's laptop. Lines of code flash across the screen, revealing encrypted files labeled Ellison Fund Transactions. Laura's fingers itch to dive in, but Anna's hand shoots up. Slow down, she says. This is locked tight. We need a physical key, Something at the museum. Laura's eyes flash, her resolve hardening. Then we go there, she says, her voice unwavering. Tonight. They move fast, piling into Daniel's sleek black SUV, the city's neon lights a blur outside. Laura's hands clench, her nails digging deeper, the letter and earring burning holes in her clutch. At the museum, a looming glass structure in Manhattan, they slip past a sleeping guard, Anna's press badge their flimsy cover. The air feels charged, every step a gamble. Laura's heart thumps, her senses razor sharp. They reach Richard's office, its door locked, but Daniel's tech skills bypass the keypad in seconds. Inside, files are stacked high, but Laura's eyes lock on a safe in the corner. There, she says, pointing, her voice a hiss. Anna kneels, her lock-picking tools glinting. Keep watch, she snaps. Laura stands guard, her pulse roaring, every creak in the building spiking her adrenaline. Daniel scans the desk, pulling out a ledger marked EF Acquisitions. Look at this, he says, his voice low, urgent. Payments to offshore accounts. Millions. For paintings never displayed. Laura's breath catches, her mind racing. Fakes, she says, her voice a quiet thunder. They're selling fakes, pocketing the cash. The safe clicks open, revealing a folder labeled Pearl Project. Laura snatches it, her hands steady despite her pounding heart. Inside, photos of the stolen portrait, invoices, and a list of buyers, names tied to Richard and Margaret. Her jaw tightens, her teeth grinding. This is it, she says, her voice a blade slicing through the silence. But a shadow moves outside the door, heavy footsteps echoing. Laura's head snaps up, her breath freezing. Someone's coming, she whispers, her voice a warning. Anna shoves the folder into her bag, her movement swift. Daniel grabs Laura's arm, his grip firm. We're not done, he says, his voice a low growl. They slip into a side hallway, hearts pounding as the footsteps grow louder. Laura clutches the pearl earring, its weight a tether to the truth. Richard's voice cuts through the darkness, barking orders to a guard. Find them. Now. Laura's resolve hardens, her fists clenching. They've got evidence, but they're not safe yet. The hunt is on, and the stakes just skyrocketed. Richard's been playing us all. Laura Bennett's voice is a hushed blade, cutting through the dim hallway of the Manhattan Museum. Her fingers clutch the Pearl Project folder, its pages trembling in her grip as she crouches behind a display case with Daniel Harper and Anna. Her pulse slams against her ribs, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth pulse with pain. The folder, snatched from Richard Klein's safe, holds photos of a stolen Renaissance portrait, fake invoices, and a list of buyers, evidence of a decade-long scam. Footsteps echo closer, Richard's voice barking orders to a guard. They're here, find them. Laura's breath catches, her nails digging into her palms, but her eyes burn with purpose. She flips open the folder, her hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. Look at this, she whispers, pointing to a transaction dated 10 years ago. The pearl earring. It's from the stolen portrait. They've been forging it, selling fakes to collectors. Daniel's eyes narrow, his jaw tightening like a coiled spring. And laundering the money through Margaret's fund, he says, his voice a low growl. Anna, her face pale but fierce, scans a page. Millions, she hisses. They've defrauded half the art world. Laura's heart lurches, the weight of the truth crashing down. Her mind races, connecting dots. Margaret Ellison's name is on every invoice, but Richard's initials dominate the ledger. She's a puppet, Laura says, her voice sharp, certain. Richard's the mastermind. He used her museum to clean dirty money. Anna's lips press into a line, her fingers gripping the folder. He's been hiding behind her status, she says, her voice a blade. She didn't even know the full scheme. Laura's chest tightens, a mix of fury and pity. Margaret's cruelty at the auction was vile, but she's a pawn in a bigger game. Daniel's hand brushes Laura's, his touch grounding her. We've got him, he says, his voice steady, lethal. This ends tonight. But the footsteps grow louder, boots stomping closer. Laura's pulse roars, her breath shallow. She shoves the folder into Anna's bag, her movement swift, precise. We need to get this out, she says, her voice a quiet command. Anna nods, her eyes flashing. I'll call my editor. This hits the press tomorrow. Laura's resolve hardens, her fist clenching. She's not just fighting for herself now. She's exposing a criminal empire. A guard's flashlight beam cuts through the hallway, grazing the display case. Laura's heart skips, her body tensing. "Move," Daniel whispers, pulling her toward a stairwell. They slip through, the folder's weight a ticking bomb in Anna's bag. Laura's mind flashes to Margaret's panicked face at the community center, her denial about the letter. "She knew something," Laura says, her voice low, fierce. "Not everything, but enough." The truth is a knife, slicing through Margaret's facade and Richard's control. As they reach the stairwell, Richard's voice booms behind them. "You can't hide, Bennett." The threat sends a jolt through Laura, but her lips curl, defiance surging. "We're not hiding," she mutters, her voice a vow. The folder in Anna's bag holds the key to Richard's downfall, and Laura's ready to turn it. The stairwell door slams shut behind them, the sound echoing like a gunshot, promising a reckoning just steps away. "You're a dead woman, Bennett." Richard Klein's voice roars through the museum storage room, a cavern of shadows and crates where Laura Bennett stands trapped. Her pulse slams against her ribs, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth pulse with pain. The Pearl Project folder, clutched in her trembling hands, burns with the weight of Richard's decade-long scam. Fake art, laundered millions, and Margaret Ellison's unwitting complicity. Laura's breath catches, her nails digging into her palms as Richard, 50, his face twisted with rage, blocks the only exit. His dark suit blends into the gloom, but his eyes glint like a predator's, locked on her. "You should have walked away," he snarls, stepping closer, a crowbar gripped in his fist. Laura's heart lurches, her body tensing, but her voice cuts through, sharp as a blade. "You're the one who's done, Richard. This folder ends you." He laughs, a jagged sound cutting her off. "You think you can expose me? A nobody like you?" The words echo Margaret's taunts from the auction, but Laura's spine stiffens, her resolve steel. She backs against a crate, her fingers tightening on the folder, her only weapon. "I'm not a nobody," she says, her voice low, defiant. "And you're not untouchable." Richard lunges, the crowbar swinging. Laura ducks, her reflexes sharp, the metal grazing her shoulder with a sting that jolts her. She stumbles, her wine-stained beige dress catching on a crate's edge, tearing. Her pulse roars, her breath shallow, but she scrambles upright, clutching the folder. "Daniel!" she shouts, praying her husband and Anna are close. Richard's hand clamps her wrist, wrenching it back. "No one's coming," he hisses, his breath hot on her face. "Give me the folder. Now!" Laura's free hand swings, her nails raking his cheek, drawing blood. He curses, staggering back, the crowbar clattering to the floor. Her chest heaves, adrenaline flooding her veins. She bolts for the door, but Richard recovers, grabbing her arm, slamming her against a crate. Pain explodes in her back, her vision blurring, but her grip on the folder holds. "You're nothing," he spits, his fingers digging into her arm. "Just like Margaret said." Laura's eyes blaze, her voice a growl. "She was wrong. So are you." She kicks his shin hard, breaking free. Her feet pound the concrete, her breath ragged, as she dives behind another crate, heart hammering. Outside, Daniel's voice booms, desperate. "Laura, where are you?" Richard freezes, his head snapping toward the sound. Laura's lips curl, a spark of hope igniting. She clutches the folder tighter, her nails biting deeper. They evidence her lifeline. "Here!" she yells, her voice echoing through the storage room. Richard's face twists, panic flashing in his eyes. He grabs the crowbar, charging toward her hiding spot. Laura's pulse spikes, her body coiling like a spring. She dodges, the crowbar smashing into a crate, splintering wood. Shards fly, one slicing her cheek, warm blood trickling down. She scrambles through the maze of crates, her breath burning, the folder slipping in her sweaty grip. Richard's footsteps pound behind her, his curses a relentless drumbeat. "You can't run forever," he roars, his voice a thunderclap. Laura's mind races, her heart pounding with every step. She spots a fire exit, its red glow a beacon. Her hand slams the handle, but it's locked. Her stomach drops, her breath freezing. Richard's shadow looms, the crowbar raised. Last chance, he says, his voice a venomous hiss. Laura's eyes dart, spotting a metal pipe on the floor. She grabs it, her hand steady despite the fear clawing her chest. "You're finished, Richard," she says, her voice a blade, unwavering. She swings the pipe, not to strike, but to distract, forcing him back. The folder slips, landing near his feet. Her heart stops, but she dives for it, fingers brushing its edge as Richard lunges. Their hands collide, a desperate struggle, the folder caught between them. The door behind Richard bursts open, Daniel's silhouette charging in, a promise of salvation in a world gone mad. "You're done, Klein!" Daniel Harper's roar shatters the chaos of the museum's storage room, his fist slamming into Richard Klein's jaw, with a crack that echoes off the crates. Laura Bennett scrambles to her feet, her pulse hammering, her fingers clutching the Pearl Project folder as if it's her lifeline. Her beige dress, torn and stained with wine and blood, clings to her sweat-soaked skin. Her cheek stings from a splinter's cut, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth throb. Richard staggers, the crowbar slipping from his grip, his face a mask of rage and fear. Laura's breath burns, her eyes blazing with defiance. She's not running anymore. Daniel, his suit disheveled, grabs Richard's collar, pinning him against a crate. "You touched my wife," he growls, his voice a low, lethal blade. Richard's lips curl, blood trickling from his split cheek. "You've got nothing," he spits, his voice a desperate snarl. "That folder's useless without the key." Laura's heart lurches, her fingers tightening on the folder. The key. Her mind flashes to the pearl earring, still in her clutch, its weight a nagging mystery. "He's lying," she says, her voice sharp, cutting through the tension. "He's scared." Anna, her journalist friend, bursts through the fire exit, her eyes wild, a USB drive in her hand. "I cracked the server," she says, her voice clipped, urgent. "But we need the master ledger. It's physical, hidden here." Laura's pulse spikes, her mind racing. The folder lists transactions, but the ledger, Richard's real record, holds the final nail for his coffin. She scans the room, her eyes locking on a locked cabinet in the corner, its steel glinting like a challenge. "There," she says, pointing, her voice a command. Daniel shoves Richard harder, his knuckles whitening. "Where's the key?" he demands, his tone ice cold. Richard laughs, a jagged, desperate sound. "You'll never find it," he says, his eyes darting to Laura, taunting. "You're still a nobody, playing hero." The words sting, echoing Margaret's cruelty, but Laura's resolve hardens, her fists clenching. "Keep talking," she says, her voice a blade. "It's your grave." She dives for the cabinet, her hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. Anna joins her, pulling a lockpick from her pocket, her movements swift, precise. "Cover us," Anna snaps, her fingers working the lock. Daniel wrestles Richard to the ground, his knee pinning the man's chest. Richard thrashes, cursing, but Daniel's grip is iron. "Stay down," he growls, his voice a thunderclap. Laura's heart pounds, her nails biting into her palms as she guards Anna's back. The storage room feels like a cage, every creak spiking her adrenaline. Anna's lockpick clicks, the cabinet swinging open. Inside, a leather-bound ledger sits, its cover marked EF Final Accounts. Laura snatches it, her hands trembling but sure. "Got it," she says, her voice a quiet triumph. She flips it open, her eyes scanning pages of transactions, millions laundered through fake art, names of elite buyers, offshore accounts. Richard's initials are everywhere. Margaret's name a mere footnote. "It's all here," Laura says, her voice rising, fierce. "Every deal, every lie." Anna's eyes flash, her fingers pulling out her phone to snap photos. "This'll bury him," she says, her voice a hiss of victory. But Richard's laugh cuts through, chilling. "You think that's enough?" he says, his voice strained under Daniel's knee. "My partners will crush you." Laura's blood runs cold, her breath catching. Partners. The word hits like a punch, hinting at a network beyond Richard. She clutches the ledger tighter, her mind racing. The pearl earring in her clutch feels heavier, its connection to the stolen portrait screaming for answers. "Who's protecting you?" she demands, stepping closer, her voice a blade. Richard's eyes narrow, his lips sealed, but his silence betrays fear. Daniel presses harder, his voice a growl. Talk, or I break you. Richard's face twists, but he says nothing, his defiance crumbling under the weight of their evidence. Anna's phone pings, a message from her editor. Press conference tomorrow. Send everything. Laura's heart leaps, her resolve steel. We're ending this, she says, her voice unwavering. But a guard's shout echoes from the hallway, boots stomping closer. Laura's pulse roars, her body tensing. Go, Daniel says, hauling Richard up, his grip unrelenting. They bolt for the fire exit, Laura clutching the ledger, Anna with the folder. The guard's flashlight beam grazes them, a near miss. Laura's legs burn, her breath ragged, but her eyes blaze with purpose. They've got the truth, but the fight's not over. Richard's partners are out there, and they're coming. You're finished, Klein. Laura Bennett's voice slices through the packed press conference at the Manhattan Museum, her hands gripping the Pearl Project folder and the master ledger like twin grenades. Her pulse hammers, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth throb. The wine-stained, torn beige dress a battle scar from her clash with Richard Klein. Cameras flash, reporters lean forward, their pens scratching furiously. Laura stands at the podium, Daniel Harper by her side, his eyes blazing with unyielding support. Richard, handcuffed and flanked by security, glares from the side, his face a mask of fury and defeat. The air crackles, every word a spark ready to ignite. You built an empire on lies, Laura says, her voice sharp, unwavering, cutting through the room's buzz. She holds up the ledger, its pages damning. Fake art, laundered millions, stolen dreams. Reporters gasp, phones recording every syllable. Richard lunges forward, his cuffs clinking, but security yanks him back. Lies, he roars, his voice a desperate snarl. She's a fraud, a nobody. The words echo Margaret Ellison's taunts from the auction, but Laura's spine stiffens, her resolve steel. A nobody, she fires back, her voice a blade. I'm the one holding your secrets. She slams the ledger open, revealing transactions, millions funneled through fake paintings, offshore accounts, elite buyers. You used Margaret's museum to wash your dirty money, Laura says, her voice rising, a quiet thunder. She points to the Pearl Project folder. This ties you to a stolen Renaissance portrait, sold as a fake for a fortune. The crowd erupts, reporters shouting questions. Anna, Laura's journalist friend, steps forward, her phone flashing photos of the evidence. It's airtight, Anna says, her voice clipped, fierce. Names, dates, accounts. You're done. Richard's face pales, his lips trembling. You can't prove intent, he spits, his voice cracking. Laura's eyes narrow, her nails biting into her palms. We don't need to, she says, her voice a hiss. Your ledger does. She turns to the crowd, holding up the pearl earring from her clutch. This was the clue, she says, her voice steady, commanding. It led us to your scam. You thought you could bury me, but I buried you. The room hushes, the earring glinting like a verdict. Margaret Ellison, standing in the back, her sequined gown replaced by a plain suit, steps forward. Her face is ashen, her hands trembling. I didn't know, she says, her voice breaking, a shadow of her former arrogance. Richard used me. Laura's gaze locks on her, pity mixing with steel. You mocked me because I didn't fit your world, Laura says, her voice cutting. But you were his pawn. Margaret's shoulders slump, her eyes dropping. I'm sorry, she whispers, the words raw, real. The crowd murmurs, some nodding, others skeptical. Daniel steps up, his presence a wall of authority. This ends now, he says, his voice a low growl. The police have everything. The buyers are talking. Richard's head snaps up, panic flashing in his eyes. You'll pay for this, he hisses, but his voice is weak, a dying ember. Security drags him away, his curses fading as the crowd's roar swallows them. Reporters swarm Laura, questions flying, but she stands tall, her chin lifted, the folder and ledger her shield and sword. Anna's editor, a grizzled man in a cheap suit, nods from the front row. This hits the front page tomorrow, he says, his voice gruff, approving. Laura's chest swells, her breath steadying. She's not the humiliated woman from the auction anymore. She's a force, exposing a criminal empire. But her eyes flicker to Margaret, who lingers, broken but watching. A new fight looms, Margaret's redemption or her final fall. "Your empire's ashes, Klein!" Laura Bennett's voice cuts like a blade through the courtroom's tense silence. Her eyes locked on Richard Klein as he stands, handcuffed, his face a mask of defeated rage. Her pulse pounds, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth ache. The torn, wine-stained beige dress, swapped for a simple black blazer that screams defiance. The Pearl Project folder and master ledger, now evidence, sit on the prosecutor's table, their pages sealing Richard's fate. Laura's fingers curl, nails biting into her palms as the judge's gavel slams down. "Guilty," the judge declares, voice a thunderclap. "Fraud, money laundering, 7 years." Richard's shoulders slump, his snarl fading to a whimper. "You'll pay," he hisses, but security yanks him back, his cuffs clinking. Laura's lips curl, a flicker of triumph in her eyes. She turns to Daniel Harper, her husband, whose hand grips hers, his knuckles white with pride. "It's over," he says, his voice low, steady. Laura nods, her chest heaving, but her heart still races. The courtroom buzzes, reporters scribbling, cameras flashing. Margaret Ellison, in the back row, her face pale, her once sequined glory replaced by a plain coat, shrinks under the weight of her complicity. "Margaret's next," Laura says, her voice a quiet vow. The judge addresses her, voice stern. "Mrs. Ellison, community service, 6 months for aiding fraud." Margaret's head bows, her hands trembling, but she nods, accepting the sentence. Laura's eyes soften, pity mixing with steel. "She's learning," she says to Daniel, her voice low. The crowd murmurs, some nodding, others whispering. Justice has landed, swift and merciless, but Laura's pulse still hammers, sensing the bigger fight ahead. "I'm not your charity case, Margaret." Laura Bennett's voice snaps like a whip, her eyes blazing as she faces Margaret Ellison in the Bright Futures Education Hub's cramped office. Her pulse hammers, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth pulse with pain, the memory of Margaret's wine-soaked humiliation at the Grand Plaza auction still burning in her chest. Margaret, stripped of her sequined armor, stands in a plain sweater, her hands twisting, her face etched with shame. The courtroom's verdict, Richard Klein's 7 years and Margaret's 6-month community service, hangs heavy between them. Laura's fingers curl, nails biting into her palms, but her resolve is steel. "I'm trying to make this right," Margaret says, her voice low, trembling, a shadow of her former arrogance. She steps forward, her eyes pleading. "I was wrong. About you. About everything." Laura's lip curls, her voice a blade. "You mocked me, shamed me, because I didn't fit your world." Margaret flinches, her hands shaking. "I was blind," she says, her words raw, cracked. "But I see you now." Laura's chest tightens, pity warring with fury. She doesn't trust Margaret, not yet, but the sincerity in her eyes chips at her defenses. Daniel Harper, leaning against the wall, his sleeves rolled up, watches with a gaze sharp as a hawk's. "Prove it," he says, his voice a low growl. "Words are cheap." Margaret nods, her breath hitching. She pulls a folder from her bag, sliding it across the desk. "This," she says, her voice steadier, "is my redemption." Laura's eyes narrow, her fingers snatching the folder. Inside, a proposal. Ellison Art Scholars Fund, a $10 million endowment for underprivileged kids to study art, based at the community center. Laura's breath catches, her heart lurching. "You're serious?" she says, her voice sharp, probing. Margaret's chin lifts, a flicker of her old pride returning. "I've lost everything, my board seat, my reputation. This is what I have left." Her voice breaks, but she presses on. "I'm giving it to your kids." Laura's pulse quickens, her mind racing. The fund could change lives, buy books, hire teachers, and build studios. But her eyes lock on Margaret's, searching for a catch. "No strings?" she asks, her voice a hiss. Margaret shakes her head, her hands trembling. "No strings, just let me help." Laura glances at Daniel, his nod subtle but firm. She turns back to Margaret, her voice steady, commanding. You'll work here. Teach. Not as a photo op, as one of us. Margaret's face pales, her lips parting, but she nods. I will, she says, her voice a vow. Laura's chest swells, a mix of triumph and hope. She's not forgiving Margaret, not fully, but this is a start. The kids' laughter from the main room filters in, grounding her. This is why she fights. Daniel steps forward, his hand on Laura's shoulder, his touch a quiet anchor. I'm matching it, he says, his voice firm. My AI platform, free art education for every kid in Brooklyn. Laura's eyes widen, her breath catching. Daniel, she says, her voice softening, raw. He grins, a rare spark in his eyes. You inspired it, Laura. Your heart. Her fingers brush his, a silent pact. They're building something bigger than themselves. Margaret shifts, her hand still twisting. I'll fund the first studio, she says, her voice tentative but resolute. Name it after you. Laura's jaw tightens, her voice sharp. Not me, the kids. Margaret nods, her eyes dropping, a tear slipping down her cheek. The room feels charged, the weight of redemption heavy but real. Laura tucks the folder under her arm, her resolve unyielding. This doesn't erase what you did, she says, her voice a quiet thunder. But it's a step. Margaret's shoulders slump, but she meets Laura's gaze, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. A volunteer pokes her head in, her voice urgent. Laura, the kids are ready for the art showcase. Laura's lips curve, a spark of pride igniting. She's not just surviving, she's shaping a future. As she steps toward the door, Margaret lingers, her hands steady now, ready to follow. The fight's not over, but the tide has turned and Laura's leading the charge. You can't erase the past, but you can build a future. Laura Bennett's voice rings out, sharp and unyielding, as she stands at the heart of the Bright Futures Education Hub's art showcase in Brooklyn. Her pulse pounds, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth throb, but her eyes blaze with a fire forged from months of battle. Her simple black dress, free of the wine stains and tears from her clash with Margaret Ellison and Richard Klein, is a testament to her resilience. The room buzzes with kids' laughter, their colorful drawings pinned to every wall, each stroke a defiance of the world that once called Laura a nobody. Her fingers curl, nails biting into her palms as she grips a microphone, her voice a beacon for the crowd of parents, volunteers, and reporters. Daniel Harper stands beside her, his hand brushing hers, his touch a steady anchor. His eyes, sharp with pride, scan the room, kids beaming, volunteers bustling, and Margaret Ellison, in a plain sweater, handing out paintbrushes with a quiet focus that betrays her transformation. Laura's chest swells, a mix of triumph and hope. This is for them, she says, her voice cutting through the chatter, pointing to a boy whose painting of a Brooklyn skyline glows with promise. Not for your headlines. Reporters shift, pens pausing, caught by her raw conviction. Margaret steps forward, her face pale but resolute, her hands steady for the first time in months. I was wrong, she says, her voice low, raw, slicing through the room's hum. About Laura? About worth? The crowd hushes, phones lowering, sensing the weight of her words. I mocked her, shamed her, because I thought power was wealth. Her eyes meet Laura's, a flicker of shame mingling with sincerity. I learned it's not. Laura's lips press into a line, her heart twisting. She doesn't forgive, not fully, but Margaret's work here, teaching kids, funding the Ellison Art Scholars Fund, is proof of change. A girl, no older than 10, tugs at Laura's dress, holding up a drawing. Miss Laura, is it good? Her eyes shine, hopeful. Laura kneels, her fingers brushing the paper, her voice softening. It's perfect, Maya, she says, her smile genuine, grounding her in the moment. Her mind flashes to the auction, to Margaret's wine splashing her dress, to Richard's crowbar swinging in the museum's shadows. Those scars remain, but this room, these kids, is her victory. She rises, her chin lifting, her voice steady. Every child here deserves a chance, she says, addressing the crowd. Not because of money, but because of who they are. Daniel steps up, his presence commanding. We're making that happen, he says, his voice a low thunder. My AI platform, free art education for every kid in this city, starts today. The crowd erupts, applause crashing like waves. Laura's heart leaps, her fingers tightening on his. You didn't have to, she whispers, her voice raw. He grins, his eyes warm. You showed me why I had to. The words hit deep, a reminder of their shared fight, their love forged in fire. Margaret hands a paintbrush to a boy, her movements careful, deliberate. Like this, she says, her voice soft, guiding his hand. Laura watches, her chest tightening. Margaret's not the woman who mocked her anymore. The fun, the volunteering, the humility, it's real. She's trying, Laura says to Daniel, her voice low, reflective. He nods, his jaw firm. She's lucky you gave her a chance. Laura's lips twitch, a half smile breaking through. It's not for her, it's for them. She gestures to the kids, their laughter a defiant song. A reporter raises a hand, voice sharp. Mrs. Bennett, how do you feel about Klein's conviction? Laura's eyes harden, her pulse quickening. Justice isn't just punishment, she says, her voice ablade. It's this, giving kids a future he tried to steal. The crowd nods, some wiping eyes moved by her fire. Another reporter calls out, And Mrs. Ellison? Laura glances at Margaret, who freezes, paintbrush trembling. She's earning her place, Laura says, her voice firm but fair. One day at a time. The showcase buzzes on, kids showing off their art, parents beaming. Laura steps back, her hand in Daniel's, her heart steady for the first time in months. She sees Maya, the girl with the drawing, laughing with Margaret, who kneels beside her, smiling. A real smile, not the smirk of the auction. Laura's chest swells, a quiet victory settling in her bones. She's not just the billionaire's wife, not just the woman who survived humiliation. She's Laura Bennett, who turned pain into purpose. Daniel leans in, his voice a whisper. You changed everything. Laura's eyes meet his, her breath catching. We did, she says, her voice soft but fierce. The crowd's applause fades, but the kids' laughter rises, a promise of tomorrow. Laura tucks the pearl earring, once a clue to Richard's scam, into her pocket, its weight now a symbol of her strength. The fight's over, but the future's just begun, and Laura's ready to lead it. The heart of Laura Bennett's story is clear. True worth lies in kindness and resilience, not wealth or status. Her triumph over prejudice in a criminal empire proves that standing up for what's right can change lives. Have you ever faced judgment and fought back with courage? Share your stories in the comments. We'd love to hear how you've overcome challenges and stayed true to yourself. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more stories of justice and hope. See you next time.